Should I admit them all?
Yes,
Charlotte?
is it someone sharing the flyer of the event?
Yes, I'm supposed to share.
Okay, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Cool. Do I open?
Yes.
Ew. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello,
Hi.
welcome, and good evening.
Good evening, good morning,
morning.
good
morning.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
afternoon. It's great to see so many of you. Wow. We can see this is a popular topic. We had about 200 people sign up for this meeting. So welcome, welcome. My name is Charlotte. I work with the Conscious Food Systems Alliance Secretariat, and Noemi Altobelli, who many of you know, our community manager, and I are delighted to welcome you in this space. We'll just let a couple of minutes go so more people can join. And in the meantime, we'd love if you can introduce yourselves in the chat. Give us a sense of where you're calling from, what's your relationship to the food system. If this is the first time in a Conscious Food Systems Alliance call, COFSA, we call it for short, feel very welcome. You'll see that it's often a very warm, informal space with a lot of opportunities for sharing and learning from each other. So very, very welcome. And again, for those of you who are just joining, Conscious Food Systems Alliance is an alliance of practitioners working in food who are convinced we cannot change food systems only with technical solutions or policy changes. We really need to go at the deeper levels, lower, below the iceberg, the drivers of behavior that involve our beliefs, our mindsets, our personal capacities and skills for things like deep listening and compassion and empathy. In short, we believe inner change is absolutely fundamental for food systems change. So I'm super happy to see many of you. So I see from Edinburgh, from Congo. I can't keep up with the list. Please do introduce yourself. It's always great to see the whole world. And Francis, maybe you can stop sharing the flyer so we can see each other more easily. I think, are we recording the session yet? Yes, we are. So perfect. Well. Wow, 76 people online, and we're just getting started. So yes, as I said, I'm Charlotte Dufour. I work as practice advisor in the Conscious Food Systems Alliance now for almost 3 years. And I'm very excited about today's topic because I find it absolutely central to the work all of us do in food systems change. I've been working now 25 years in this field, and a big part of these years, at least 20, have been spent trying to help people working across sectors and across institutions work together in a common goal for better nutrition and ensuring, the food systems that produce good nutrition are also healthy for the environment. And what I've learned over these years is that is really what works. When it works, it's because the human relationships work. People are able to connect, to find common ground, to understand each other, and to see and find ways to navigate a road of change together. And in that, the facilitation that can be given can make a huge difference, right? I've seen that many times what gets in the way of positive transformation is, I'll put it bluntly, egos, either personal egos or institutional egos. But at the end, we're also all very happy when we can go beyond them and build something collective. And yes, that's what facilitation is about. So I'm very excited today because we have fantastic facilitators who are giving us a few tips and tricks. But I'd really like to emphasize that it's not going to be about, how you make a breakout group or how you sequence or design an agenda. What we're interested here today is really this inner dimension of facilitation, the consciousness we put in it. And again, as somebody who's also been doing quite a lot of facilitation over the years, I found that my ability to hold space was closely tied to my own inner journey and how I feel. If I feel grounded, if I feel present, if I feel empathetic who's in the room, the whole dynamics of a meeting can change. If I'm stressed or nervous, etc., it doesn't work so well. So this inner dimension of facilitation is key. And to talk about this very special topic with us today, we have three amazing women who really are the pros in this field. Jessica Buckler. Jessica is an applied artist, transpersonal psychologist, and she's co-founding director of the Aleph Trust, which actually offers programs in this field. We have Maria Soledad Riestra, who's a lead advisor on effective collaborative action in the food systems team of the United Nations Development Program, so a close colleague of ours, and we always learn a lot from her in our daily work. And Nana Wu, a very long-term member of COFSA, who's educational program designer in SICEM. And we're here to give us a few ideas of how we can be conscious, but also happy, fulfilled facilitators. So as we step into this space, let's all pretend we are pro facilitators, but we're still probably a bit nervous. And that's why I'm going to invite Nana to already share from now a little trick of something she does to help herself feel more comfortable when she's facilitating a space. And I feel actually I would need it too right now as well. So Nana, over to you for a little guided practice.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm also a little bit tingling in my chest and then in my soul. So this exercise, very simple. We will do some very simple movement. So I do that in the beginning of session to myself, also to the whole group also. So I invite you just first be mindful and conscious about our hand. We'll spend a little bit time, just look at your hand now. Now we are all maybe excited to have this time, but now focus, your consciousness is on your hand. Just look at your hand, your palm inside. Suddenly what's happening here? But just look at your hand, your palm, how it looked like. Just spend time to really observe. Is my hands warm? My hands cold? And you can turn around your hand and then look at the outer part of the hand. There's also small nails. What nail is doing in my hand? Huh? Just really look at your hand, spend some time to really connect with the physical body part. Yeah? And I invite you to turn the palm towards you, and I will show you, but you don't need to look at the screen. You can just relax into the exercise. Very simply, you will fold your fingers to make a fist, and you will slowly open and then really observe how your hand is opening. Yeah. So I'm doing it to show you, but you can just relax, hands on your knees, and you can just experience. Yeah. So we do it, just open your hand and close your hand very gently. Open your hands and close your hand. And now we will put two hands together. Close your hand and open your hand. But now our imagination is like we are like a flower. Flower is closing in the nighttime and then open in the daytime. Imagine when you close, you feel warmth, like you put the blanket around you. And when you open, you can have more light towards you. Once again, close, towards yourself, and then open to the world. Once again, close as if it's warm. And then now I'm ready to open, to hold the space. Come back to yourself to connect with your own heart. And then open to connect with the outer world. With that now, we will think about all the participants now everywhere in the world. Our consciousness is now in the soul community of the soul part. So if everybody now open your hands, open your soul, and really imagine each one of you, we don't know exactly where, but we see the smiley face. Now we close together to oneself. And then now open to connect each one of us soul and our work. And back to oneself, to connect with my heart. And then open your heart and connect to the world. And it can get bigger. So to your heart. And really open to the space. But again, we have to come back to take care of ourselves. And when you are ready, you open your heart to connect with all the world. Once again, warmth in my heart, and then light to the world. I will speak the Arabic poem. You just keep continue movement. Al-laylu wan-nahar, al-bahru wal-bihar, gami'oha, tushi, connect with the self, leokodrak al-ille. Again, yal-shamsu wa hawa, connect atiul wa faza. Last time, gami'oha, to see oneself, open leokodrak al-ille. So I invite you to how much to connect with your own soul space is also important to take care. And then once you are ready, you can really connect with the outer world. And that's the natural rhythm of the whole earth. I hope you are a bit ready and then less nervous, but let's see how we are carrying this space together.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Nana. And now I'm going to hand over to Noemi. In this little time together, we're going to hear storytelling from Jessica, Soleil, and Nana, and we're going to have a fishbowl conversation on what is conscious facilitation. We'll then go into some breakout groups. Oh, no, we'll do a little bit more than that, but I won't tell you more. We'll keep it as a surprise. Yes, and see how it all goes. So, Noemi, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Charlotte. So welcome, everyone. I'm Noemi, the community manager of the Conscious Food Systems Alliance. And I'm very happy and honored to host you today for this special event. And we will take a moment now to know our speaker on a deeper level. So rather than introducing myself, I would love to invite them to share their own story, their own journey, who they are, what brought them to this work, and how their experience have shaped their facilitation journey. So I start with Jessica. So what led you to this work, Jessica? And what inspired you along the way? And on more personal level, what has been your inner experience of facilitation? So over to you. Jessica, you're mute. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for spotting that. And again, welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Noemi and Charlotte. And yeah, I've been on a meandering journey from the performing arts into public health, into psychology and academia, into deep ecology, and then food and farming. And I wanted to share a couple of stories from this journey to illustrate what inner facilitation and conscious facilitation means to me. So I'm from Germany originally, and I came to the UK in 1996 to study community arts. And then I worked for many years in England running health projects, using the arts to support people experiencing mental and physical ill health. And very quickly, I saw in my work the connections between people's living circumstances and their ill health. So many of the projects that were funded and that I took part in operated in very rundown parts of the country with lots of deprivation, unemployment, pollution. And people were living and trying to thrive in these places with little access to nature and little access to good food, and also old housing. And, you can imagine a rundown environment, just asphalt roads and shops with cheap and highly processed foods. Very soulless, some of these places, soulless shopping centers, half boarded up. These weren't thriving places, and it was really obvious in a way that it wasn't simply what people were doing in their personal lives that was making them ill, but it was the environment that they were in. They were trying to live there, they were trying to live well there, but they were really struggling with the place they found themselves in. And so in the projects that I managed and co-facilitated, we experimented with how the external space could make a difference to inner healing. And for me, the external and the internal have always been linked in this work. So as facilitators, we were either bringing people into nature where possible, walking in nature, going on photography walks, or sharing food outside, having picnics, or working with natural materials to make art. Or we brought these materials into places and spaces that were really deprived and run down in order to brighten up those places, raise the energy. We brought nutritionists in to shopping centers to invite mums with their children to make fruit collages and veggie sculptures. And then later we turned those into fruit smoothies that people could take home. And we also tried to engage people in activities where they could create something that they could take home, like a tabletop garden, for example, because many of the people that we worked with didn't have access to natural spaces and didn't have gardens. So I'm sharing this because it was really this linking of the inner and the outer, and looking at the outer space and what we need to do in terms of the space being a facilitator and an inhibitor and also an enabler. That's one story I wanted to share. And then I wanted to also deep dive into something that was hugely inspirational for me on my journey with conscious facilitation. And it's a story that dates back a long time now. It was kind of the beginning of my professional journey in the late 1990s. I had the opportunity to train in conflict resolution through the Council of Europe, which had brought together young people working on projects for social change. And I had a very deep experience there of meeting others in training, learning to be present with people in conflict. We were role playing, and I really learned to listen beneath the story of the conflict to the energy in the room and the deeper needs that were being communicated. And this always stayed with me. I mentioned it was the late 1990s. It was actually the time of the Balkan Wars, the Kosovo crisis in particular. And there were two young men in one of the trainings that I took part in, a Serb and a Kosovo. And we entered into a mediation between them. And the young Kosovo had brought a brick, which he placed on the table in the room. And he said, "This is all that is left of my home." And I remember this feeling of my awareness narrowing down into the experience of this brick, which symbolized all the pain that this young man had lived through. And then during the conflict resolution which followed, which went on for several hours, there was a kind of reversal of from the narrowing down of awareness to a widening of awareness through a really deep listening process. And I remember listening with the whole of my body, mirroring what I was perceiving in the room. And there came a point when I was no longer there. And there was just this experience of witnessing, of feeling, of sensing through the whole of the body. And there was a feeling of, wow, there's no other in that. There was suddenly no other. So from this tunnel awareness to an opening of awareness and a deep realization of actually interconnectedness and oneness. This has stayed with me for all these years, and it really inspired me to go on this journey of consciousness-based facilitation, of exploring consciousness practices for many years through meditation, facilitation, integrative education in the Aleph Trust. And yeah, this then, through the Aleph Trust, led me over time to deep ecology, land-based spirituality. And then now we're doing work in food and farming. There's a project called the Karma Farmer, which is about UK food systems transformation. And we do other things, but all these pieces came together in this realization of interconnectedness as a lived reality and not just a concept. I'll leave it there, and I'll pass it back to Noemi. Thank you.
Jessica, thank you for your openness and for sharing with us those beautiful stories. I moved to Maria Soledad. So tell us about what led you to this work and what inspired you along the way. Over
Thank
to
you so much. Thank you, Noemi, and thank you, Charlotte, and everyone for holding the space for us, because usually we are the ones holding the space, so it feels very nurturing to be held for a change, so thank you. My name is Maria Soledad Riestra. I'm Argentinian by origin, but I've lived in many places around the world. And so I'm going to share a bit of my journey as well. I love that the proposal of doing it in a storytelling mode. And I'm a very visual person, so I put together a few visuals to share with you. So I'm going to start the story, actually, on the tipping point, not at the beginning. I'm going to be a bit playful with the storytelling here. I'm going to start with that red pill, blue pill moment. And it's actually a poem that reads, perhaps we yearn for an impossible dream, to belong here and now to each other, to be the roots and the soil, to grow from place and thrive, to go out and perform as a troupe performs, and then return home to be greeted and fed, and then to sleep. My home is now, during my turn on the planet, passing through with this tribe, this troupe of wonderful, creative, vital people, alive at a time of astonishing loss. And this poem for me was the sort of the red pill. It was written by Chris Seeley. She was an amazing artist. She was my tutor during my master's and my PhD, which I had the luxury to do on kind of these questions of facilitation and identity and who am I and how do I show up in the world in the work that I do. And she was an artist as well, and she was, I think, the most conscious facilitator that I've ever met. And she really inspired me to think of conscious facilitation or myself as, you know, what does that mean to me? But now going back to the beginning, I don't know if there are any Latins here, but the thing about facilitation for me is that I've always been a facilitator for some reason or another, even when I didn't choose to be as a child. And Mafalda is an Argentinian comic of a child, very overthinking and activist and very sensitive about the world issues. And I remember my family used to call me Mafalda. So there was something about, and I was a lot about, brokering relationships and convening and bringing people together in a family that kind of needed it in a way. So so then I grew up into my professional role. I've been facilitating for more than 21 years, but in very different ways. I moved to HR and organizational development. And my facilitation at the beginning was a lot about taking people from point A to point V. And the organization that I was working for was kind of putting me, and I was putting myself in that role of selling a solution or selling a B point, right? And sort of convincing people that that was the direction that things should go. But that didn't sit quite well with me. I think in the early days, I was already questioning, but what if people don't really think that point B should be the direction? What if I don't agree with point B? What happens, right? And so I moved from HR and organizational development, I reconnected with with what mattered to me, which was more the state of the world. And that's where the questioning around how does facilitation look like from that perspective shifted. And as I said, I was lucky enough to merge my educational journey with as sort of the platform to explore those questions. I did a master's and a PhD at Ashridge Business School, which is action research based. So it allows for this sort of connection between the personal and the collective and the system. And so my questions were at the beginning when I started that journey, the first day of the master's was, how can I contribute to a better, more sustainable world? And so there was something around searching for the best techniques, the better posture, the more sophisticated language. What works better? Is it play? Is it good presentations? Is it visuals? Is it circles? Is it squares? What is it? So there was something about looking for a holy grail of facilitation, but also of sustainability in a way. And that kind of shifted with another poem offered by another mentor. This is an extract from a poem from David Whyte that says, if anything or anyone does not bring you alive, then it is too small for you. And so my whole inquiry around myself, my work, my identity, and how does that reflect in my facilitation shift towards what is a life worth living in aliveness and astonishing loss, going back to the poem. And so there was a process of coming back to myself, acknowledging my lack of control as to the future of the world, that there's no fixed, no right answers. And so what is my purpose, regardless of the outcome in a way? And that led to where I feel I am today with those questions, obviously ever evolving, which is who am I as an individual and as a facilitator? And this is very much linked to what Charlotte was mentioning and Jessica and Nana with the exercise of, how do we from ourselves, that pulse of going from individual to collective and that energy that flows from ourselves into the room, the people, the work that we do. So who am I as an individual and as a facilitator? What is needed in this process, in this space, in this moment? That is a question that's very much alive for me when I'm facilitating. And so what I noticed is that this process of conscious facilitation at the beginning feels a bit difficult, but then it becomes more natural. It's a reflective process. It's a bit like driving for those who drive cars. At the beginning, there's so much to pay attention to, but then it kind of flows naturally. And this idea of connection between self, group, the moment, the system. One of the key things that helped me in allowing myself to act as a conscious facilitator is, and I always say that in every single thing that I facilitate, the outcome is a shared responsibility. I, as a facilitator, am not responsible for the outcome. We all are. And suspending judgment as well. So trying to hold myself in that rush of allowing my unconscious bias to guide my emotions and my responses. And the other thing was, coming back to the beginning of the journey where I was very much focused on what is the best technique, actually not attaching myself to any particular facilitation style, but being conscious of my own boundaries and limitations, and bringing that to the table as well. So this is a bit of the journey that led me here. And I have to say today where I'm at is that, to me, conscious facilitation is a way of facilitating that brings me alive, basically, and allows me to support the issues and causes that matter the most to me, despite the challenges, because it isn't a bed of roses. But when I see these pictures, that I was very lucky to be in an event where I got to see myself. We as facilitators, we're always seeing the rest except us, right? Because it's what our eyesight can show us. I felt very grateful for having the space and the opportunity to, through my work, bring myself alive. And so the invitation is, in a way, to, when you think about conscious facilitation, find your own definition, find your own way, find your own journey, but make sure that it takes you to a place that brings you alive. So hopefully that's it from my side. I'm going to pass it on to Noémie. And yes, thank you so much for this space.
Thank you, Sole. I feel more alive just listening. So now I pass to Nana. Nana, what led you to this work and what inspired you along the way?
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm already feel like overwhelming in a way, like, because there's a many facilitators in front of you. So I feel really honored to share my personal story in front of you. Yeah, so I can see like a different experience, different countries. So my story started when I was an art university student. I'm originally from South Korea. I was very angry activist. I think all Korea, you have to change the economic, you have to change the politics, everything is awful, education is awful. I was very bitter, I was very angry, I was more assertive kind of character. And then I thought everybody has to listen to me. My voice is right, I have to express my voice, speak the truth, woman, we have to fight. So I was more in this art, but more art activist. At the same time, I had a question, can art, like Jessica also mentioned about, can art also serve to change the social transformation? Not only expressing the truth in more angry way, but can art can really hold the space of change? Was like when I was back younger then, had this kind of call. And then I get to know Joseph Beuys, the German artist from 70s. He mentioned one sentence about every human being is an artist. And I was like, what is that? Every human being is an artist. I thought I'm the artist, I can really speak the truth. I'm not unique kind of group, but what is it? Every human being is artist. So there was my life of what is it actually, this quality everybody can have. And that lead me to be more facilitator. So they told me like art in facilitating skills. So storytelling, movement art, many kind of art practice can also serve to deliver different topics. Not just being an artist for sake of being artists, but art can serve the different profession, different topics. So I heard about the name facilitator. I remember that day 14 years ago from my teacher. He was a storyteller in England, and he told me like, so you are a teacher? And he said, no, I'm a facilitator. I said, what do you mean? You are teaching? I signed up for your course, and you are instructor, teacher or professor. You are in the university. And he said, no, I'm facilitator. And then what do you mean, even facilitator? Now I guess everybody know the answer in this place. So already to facilitate, it was kind of new word. It's not teacher or instructor and professor. I'm a facilitator. So already Maria shared about it's a bit more humble gesture of, I'm not trying to teach you or give a content in this imposing way, But I'm also Charlotte in the beginning, like, okay, we are holding the space. And at that time, as a young person, like, what do you mean holding the space? Even that was also kind of, what is it, holding the space? But after 14 years practicing with art and facilitating, also when you ask me about what is conscious facilitator, so not anymore facilitator, being conscious facilitator. So I was also thinking last 1 month, what is it, Nana, actually? Can I say I'm a conscious facilitator? And then I was going back to this holding the space. So I asked myself what I'm doing actually with the people. I teach food, nutrition, menstruation cycle, violence, social change, or sometimes economy of love, many different topics. But then I realized this, I really hold a space. Our participant, a human being, can have a good conversation. I feel they can really reflect. Suddenly new thought come, which they never thought about it. So it's a tool, it's methodology is kind of tool, but I feel like facilitator, conscious facilitator, we hold a space where each participant, they can reflect on their life, because your daily self is busy. But in this kind of space, they can really think a little bit in a way, overviewing holistic view, and they listen to each other, and they start to have a conversation. And then one point, this space becomes sacred. Sacred. Like, and then doesn't matter it's economic, it's a food system, or gender equality, but something, this space is very unique and special. Each one become more and more themselves. And they're also surprised by, I was thinking like this, I was feeling like this. And then suddenly we feel like, oh, we are holding this space together. So I feel like conscious facilitators is holding the space, in a way, protect from the daily life. So we have to have a strength to kind of create this space a bit more pure form as a conscious facilitator. At the same time, each individual can really be themselves. And then I realized after that, what is really happening is something healing human connection. Something I feel like this word healing come to me last 1 week. I think conscious facilitator is really healing the human relationship and nature. And suddenly after this session, including me, I learned from what people shared, and I feel like, I give some kind of healing to our conversation, even our thought. And then hopefully this action can be more. So I feel like we are like healer in a way. So that's kind of, I will sleep with it, and this quality of healing comes very strongly. And this also question back to you, how do you resonate in this direction of, as a healer, actually, we are maybe secret healer.
Thank you. Thank you, Nana, for your wisdom. And thank you all for introducing yourself so authentically and showing up with openness and vulnerability. So it's a truly gift for this space. And now we are going to deep dive on conscious facilitation. So in the essence of conscious facilitation. So I will be asking a few questions that we have identified also based on the reflection the audience shared in the registration process. And I would love to start with Jessica and invite her into the conversation. So when we spoke earlier, while we were preparing this event, she shared with me the experience in creating safe space, and I was really moved by your insights. So I would love you to share this wisdom with everyone. So the first question I'm asking is, in your experience, what helps create a conducive group experience? So what do you do to convene space for dialogue that is safe, spacious, and brave? And what are the inner qualities that are essential to holding space so well? So over to you, Jessica. And maybe I put also the question in the chat. So
thank you. That's great, Noemi. And there are so many aspects to this. And I was sitting with those questions and thinking, how would I answer them? Where would I begin? And when I think about when I set up a facilitation process, when I begin to engage with a group, actually I begin with the external space and with the team. So the external space might be online or it might be offline in a particular location. And as I mentioned in the story I shared earlier, in a lot of the community arts work that I did, this recognition came up for me very early on that the space we're in can either energize the group process or it can actually drain it. It can enable or it can be an inhibitor. It can kind of constrain the group. I've done work now also more in corporate settings, and let's say you're in a corporate office, right? In one of those modern buildings with glass doors, and people can look into the room. So even just being with a group inside a room, and maybe I want to lead a short meditation and I'm asking people to close their eyes. If there are glass doors and other people can look in, it's really intrusive, right? It can feel really uncomfortable to be asked to sit and close your eyes whilst you know other colleagues are walking past in the corridor and are looking in. So even the architecture can already, inhibit or enable what happens in the room. And the way the furniture is organized, what kinds of chairs are there? Is there a table in the middle that sort of dominates, or can we sit in a circle? Some people sometimes want to sit on the floor. How can we sort of honor these different ways of being that we want to invite in when we're in these architectural constraints? Windows, what kind of a view do we have? What are we looking at? So there's something just about the physical space. For me, it begins there, the facilitation journey. The same in a Zoom room. If I'm holding a Zoom room, how many people will be there? How will we navigate that space together? Touching into something of a shared group experience, because it is possible. You can feel each other and you can have an embodied experience, even whilst you're in front of the computer. But it takes thinking and feeling into how the space can be held in a conducive way. There's also something, of course, about working in nature. If we can, then it's fantastic, because I feel we all feel and relax more into ourselves. We feel more natural when we're in natural spaces. But then being outside can feel a little bit uncontained and can feel unsafe. So there's even research into this in nature-based therapies, which looks at what kinds of natural spaces feel safe and conducive. And it's usually when there is this sense of a sanctuary, a boundaried space. So not just a space that is completely wild and open, but a space that has a little bit of containment through a kind of boundary that is there, or maybe trees creating a canopy. You can think of it yourself. You can feel into it when you've been in natural spaces where you felt enclosed and held by nature. So that's what I'm talking about. And yes, if you're inside an urban, unnatural environment, finding a way to bring something natural and soulful into the space really, really helps, because the external space shapes the internal space. And then I want to feel more into the internal piece. So I want to expand on that, because that's the other side of the coin, as it were. And that has to do with, okay, what's happening inside of me, and also between the facilitators, if there are more of us, and then what happens in the group. And like Charlotte said right at the beginning, how I show up, how I feel, and what I bring in energetically is really important. My emotions on any given day. Am I feeling calm and grounded, or am I feeling a bit nervous and on edge because of other things that have happened? We all have complex lives. And also, just to say there, it doesn't mean, conscious facilitation to me doesn't mean that I have to show up positive and try and be nice and suppress something that I may be living through that may be difficult. For me, it's more about being really authentic, being real, acknowledging what is real for me, but also holding that with some containment. So there's there's a kind of self-awareness. I'm needing to really listen in and notice what's going on for me. But then also self-regulation. So working with practices to help me anchor emotions, to cultivate spaciousness and calm, to help me to slow down. Maybe also share something of how I'm feeling. That's kind of opening up, isn't it? When someone is vulnerable and open in that way, giving a little bit of themselves, it makes everybody feel a bit more relaxed and a bit more open. But then also not oversharing, right? So it's that really fine balance. And it can be really helpful to do that if you are with others, with a team, to kind of sense into, to have a reflective process there and to ask afterwards, how did I show up? How did that land? What did you experience? So the reflective process in the team is hugely important to me. And the co-regulation that can happen in the space when you're with multiple facilitators. So you're holding and you're navigating together and you're feeling together what's going on between you and the group. And then I would add a couple more things. A group agreement is really important. How we commit to showing up. And it's important that that is devised in the group. I mentioned facilitator debriefing already, noticing what's happening in the room, engaging in an emergent process always. So, you know, we may plan a few sessions, but then we reflect and we see what's happening, and then we revise the plan, as it were. There's a plan, and then things don't go to plan. Life just unfolds, and we need to go with that flow. So those are some of the things that I would say are really important in terms of holding space internally, externally, and feeling into the group field. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Jessica, for sharing. And I'm sorry to cutting you, but we are a bit late in our agenda. Another question we want to ask you that many people are interested in is that often as a facilitator, we find ourselves navigating tension and conflict within groups. And in this moment can feel very challenging. But as you shared with me before, they also hold the potential for deep transformation. So I would like you to shortly, because we are a bit late, answer what's your experience on working with tension and conflict. Thanks.
Yeah, it's a really important question, and I'll be succinct. What I would say is whenever there is an arising tension or conflict in the space, curiosity is really powerful. Saying yes to what happens in that moment, affirming it, not shutting it down, not confronting it unless, you know, it needs to be contained, but to align with it, to be open to it, to be non-judgmental, to let what is arising be expressed. So not suppressing that energy, but letting it express itself. Come alongside it physically if you can, not being in confrontation, but being with the other. And then pausing, slowing down, making space for the whole group to feel it, to experience it. So to slow that process down, asking, I'm curious about this. Let's pause here for a moment. What are you all sensing? Being non-judgmental, being non-aggressive, honoring the experience in the moment and really listening in and not so much judging or giving advice, listening. And from there, then you can feel into the possibilities that want to arise, right? And it might be that you want to kind of offer options around, maybe you want to say yes to it in the space and open a discussion around it, or maybe it's appropriate to suggest that this point of conflict is taken into another session specifically, or maybe followed up on outside of a session. So you're giving some options to the group and the people involved in the conflict to navigate that conflict. So it's honored, but the group process is also held intact. And then if it is very intense, I would say, again, I mentioned slowing down and pausing, giving options for taking it outside of the room, possibly even if there are multiple facilitators. And then later also checking in with the group. How did you perceive this? Leaning into the intelligence of the group, because the group can make sense of this together. We're not alone. We're not alone in facilitating. So that's what I would say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And I think this brings us to another key aspect of facilitation, that is power dynamics. So I would like to call Sole, because I know you have been working on this extensively. And in particular, given the fact that we are the Conscious Food Systems Alliance, we know that food systems transformation to happen needs multi-stakeholders and multi-sectoral collaboration. But this also involved power dynamics. So, Sole, how do you navigate power dynamics in your work? And also, I just do another question to you, like, what's the food systems characteristics like of the sector? So over to you.
Thank you so much. And it's such a complex question and a difficult one. There's no one single answer. I can think of an example where we managed to get a bit of light at the end of the tunnel. I wouldn't dare to call it success. So we were facilitating together with a colleague a session in a country not long ago, between a regional multi-stakeholder platform and the regional government. And the regional government was presenting a project for a public investment project. And they were proposing to expand the agricultural territory, the land used for agriculture. And so that meant, I think, 7,000 hectares more of, deforestation and yeah, basically land that wasn't being used for agriculture was going to start being used for agriculture. And we had this regional platform with academia, with producers, smallholder associations, researchers, NGOs, and everyone in the room was saying, why don't we use that public investment project instead of expanding the agricultural territory, the land, to improve the productivity of the actual production that we have, which is in their need of improvement. Invest in technology, renew the plantations, and so on. And obviously there was a power dynamic going on because the government was holding the budget. They came to the session with a sort of cooked, in a way, a defined project. But actually what we did is we kind of created different spaces for dialogue. So we used tools like the fishbowl. And the fishbowl exercise, probably many of you know, are two concentric circles, a small circle where the active conversation happens, and another circle where the rest of the participants are actively listening. And within the internal circle, there always needs to be an empty chair. Why? Because whomever from the outer circle wants to jump into the inner circle and be actively sharing and being part of the conversation and not just listening needs to have that opportunity to do so. And then when that happens, someone that's already been in the inner circle needs to leave the inner circle and go to the outer circle. So that was a very physical way of creating space for participation and for listening, and to kind of remove the typical voices that would take over the microphone in a way and distribute the power. Yeah. That was an intervention that helped. And the other intervention that helped in that particular case was to make the invisible visible. What I'm saying is that it was clear that every stakeholder group wanted to go in the direction of, let's use this public investment project to improve the land that was already cultivated, the productive land, and that the government was proposing something different. But when we verbally tried to make that obvious, no one wanted to really acknowledge that that was what was happening. So what we did is while people were having their lunch, we created one slide where we put it on the screen when they came back, and we said, look, from this process, this is what we're hearing, and this is what we are assuming that you are agreeing to.
Sometimes it doesn't.
And so when we put that on the screen, it seems that we are agreeing that we need to use this budget for supporting the improvement of the existing agricultural productive land. Then that became a sort of a moment of truth where something needed to be either acknowledged or not. And that shifted the conversation. And that's when people actually said, no, that's not what we're saying. Oh, okay, then what are you saying? And the conversation really moved into that space of truth in a way, and kind of stopped being so like going around the elephant in the room. Yeah. And luckily at the end of the day, they kind of agreed that they needed to revisit the objective of the project, and they continued the conversations later on. So just to say, power dynamics are very hard to deal with, but there are micro practices on the spot that can help at least make them visible and give people the opportunity to revert them or to balance them if there's some level of willingness to do so. Yeah, sorry, hope that wasn't too long.
No, thank you. It's perfect. And I've seen people raise hands to to ask questions. So please write them in the chat so our speaker will answer to you. And thank you again, Sole. And I want to bring also Nana into the conversation because she has been working a lot with different cultures and background. So Nana, in your experience, in intercultural facilitation, how can facilitator be sensitive towards different cultures, and how do you navigate cultural differences? And you told me in the preparation session, including both individual culture and also collective cultures while you hold the space. And then at the same time, I would put all the questions together. You are an artist and you work with creativity. So what's the role of creativity in conscious facilitation? And I will ask you to answer in 5 minutes maximum.
I already put 5-minute timer.
Thank you.
Yeah, so because my background, of course, I was born in Korea, art, and I trained facilitating in England, and I'm now in Egypt last 6 years. And here my audience is mainly 90% Islamic background and very much rural areas. I work with the farmers, factory workers at SECCAM, or teachers, sometimes university professors, sometimes like ambassadors from Britain or Germany. So there's many different audience also coming to SECCAM because SECCAM is getting well known. And then we have at the same time, my favorite part is really the earth grassroots kind of audience. So with that, it's recently, since I came to Egypt, how to work with the culture, because people said, I think it's a question from Andreas Zick, something I think maybe I might integrate your question also. They said this kind of facilitation will not work in this Egyptian farmers and the woman in the rural area. It's only the European, more open-minded kind of community. At the same time, first, I tried to be really a different character. With the farmer, my voice changed, my costume changed, my posture of sitting changed. But I don't know how many people could experience that. Also, rural area in the woman, my voice and everything has to change. In the beginning, there's a question about, am I losing my identity? But at the same time, I'm more and more learning if I can sacrifice my too much personality and individuality in the beginning, the outer look, to be with this kind of culture and to really respect and experience this diverse culture and then really be with them. Sometimes I feel like I'm an actress. And with ambassador come, I have to wear the suit and then put nice earring. But what is this outer look to be in this kind of different culture, so to say, even different background of the economic state and social state. So I'm more exploring this being an actor type of facilitator. At the same time, individual culture, even though same background, of course, individually, they are very different. So I realized I need to meditate a lot and then especially raise my observation skill. It's not about what people say, maybe their face expression, their posture. Am I sensitive enough about how they are maybe not comfortable? Some certain concept is maybe too much. So I have to be very sensitive about people's mood. Of course, they will not maybe say it. How do I, and then which means observation, how their face expression, eyebrow, or more this direction. Yeah. But then this art, I mean, shortly, I can make it brief. Like, I feel like art has to be integrated into any facilitating and any teaching and education. I call it like a soul massage. I think we need to massage the soul first, and then we can maybe think some kind of new insight and a new food system or new way of being. So we need a soul massage, which is art can carry. Your emotion, your beauty, your joy, and some kind of harmony filling the group. And then you are kind of open the space, you can think a bit more clear. So for me, it's like the role of art is must in my perspective. So with that, we have also, I'm teaching now 12 women from Egypt to be a facilitator from the rural area. We might call it Mama Kofsa, still it's in my heart. Maybe Mother Kofsa kind of training. So they'll be facilitate of the food, but also the woman's health, children's health, and then also the violence and community support. So we designed 3 months facilitating program with art and basic health information. And after 3 months, they are already facilitating. Maybe in Europe, we have to study maybe 10 years or 4 years of the certain thing. But here, it's facilitator is something we used to do in a chef or sheikh or this kind of religious group. So I'm trying to reactivate this kind of culture. In the village, many people can be the facilitator, holding the space, ask questions, and then maybe something can grow. So maybe later, who's interested, I can share more about our Women Health Project, mini title Mama Kofsa. So yeah, that's also artistic training is always integrated in this kind of direction. So contact me personally if you're interested in this direction. And I want also like consult with you some of your expertise about food system and then a nutrition health coach.
Thank you very much, Nana. Thank you for sharing with us your tips. So I feel there's lots of information in this room. So I will ask Jessica to guide us through a visualization practice, to slow down a bit, to integrate what we have learned so far. And so Jessica, over to you to explain what is this practices that you are offering.
Thank you, Noemi. And I'm watching the time for us as well.
Yes.
It's going so quickly. It will slow down time. So when we were planning the session, we were thinking about what could help. And I have a small time window, so I want to dip in with you into a little bit of working internally to sense into conflict and to make sense of it. As a facilitator, whilst you're not with a group or in a process. So this is a practice you can do at home alone. And conflict, when we think about conflict, it often arises from attachments, right? Charlotte was saying earlier, ego. So attachments, egoic attachments that we have about particular views or outcomes, things that we want to see happen, or maybe, what we think should be done and how it should be achieved and so on. So with this practice that I'm going to offer you now, we're opening awareness in order to get a little bit more data about the situation and to look at it from a couple of perspectives. So I'd like you to just come and sit a little more upright and place your feet on the ground. And then if you're comfortable to close your eyes, please do so. You can also just kind of lower the eyelids a little bit so you reduce the visual input, because we'll be working with the body and with visualization, so it does help. And I invite you, by inhabiting your feet, to come home to yourself. So begin by feeling more deeply into your feet. And feel both of your feet at the same time. And notice what you can feel. And make deep contact with yourself in your feet. And as you're feeling into your feet, you can also feel the contact that you have with the ground beneath your feet. The ground is both beneath and it permeates you. It's our ground of being. And by feeling into our feet, we can feel into the ground of being, and we can enter into our wholeness. So we begin here by resting our feet on the ground. We rest in the wholeness of our being. And just feel that for a moment. As the breath flows in and out, you are anchored into the ground of being. And then I invite you to take a moment to recall a difficult situation that you may have had at work. Nothing too complex. Maybe just a moment of tension between you and one other colleague. And I'd like you to imagine that this colleague is sitting next to you, on the left or the right, you decide. But they're sitting next to you. And just notice what that feels like. Feeling back into this moment of tension. And with your colleague next to you, where are they? And how are you feeling? How are you experiencing your colleague right now? Maybe there are some emotions that are coming up. Maybe a felt sense. And see if you can give that experience, your own experience, a name, one word or a short phrase. And then take a deeper inhale and exhale, letting that go. And then I invite you to physically shift. So you're shifting into the place where you visualized your colleague. And I invite you to do that with your body. You're shifting over to where you visualized your colleague. Yeah. And closing eyes if you open them. And role reversing with your colleague. So stepping into their form. Imagine you are them now. Looking back at you. Can you feel into this moment from their perspective? You are in their shoes now. And just notice we're gently touching in. What's there? What are you noticing from their perspective? What concerns them? What do they need? And again, see if there's a word that can name this experience. Maybe it's a particular emotion or a felt sense somewhere in the body. Just one word. Yeah, we're touching in very lightly. And take another deeper inhale. And exhale. And letting that go, shifting back to where you were. And just taking a moment to brush that off, releasing that experience, letting that go. Gently opening your eyes and stretching out. Feeling your feet on the ground and back in your room. Thank you. That was a very short process, but just to touch into the feeling of role reversal and working with multiple perspectives through the body and through felt sense. And I believe we're going into breakout rooms now to make sense of what's been happening in the room between us. So exploring challenging situations in conflict, what helped you, what have you discovered in your own experience, but also what have you already heard here in this shared space from the speakers? What have you seen in the chat window? What helps you handle and navigate complex, uncomfortable situations? Thank you. So Noemi, I think we're going into breakout rooms. Is that right? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we'll see you on the other side.
Hello, Christina. In 30 seconds, the breakout rooms will close and then everyone will come back.
Oh, okay. I already got the signal to come back. So I
Yeah,
guess
yeah, there are two buttons and it's easy to get confused and click the old one the other one that bring you to the session. Here we are. Welcome back. Hello, Michelle. So just, yes, everyone is back now. Welcome back. I hope you had a nice exchange. For this part of the session, I will hand over to Charlotte for the closing.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Noemi. Wow, I know it's frustrating. The time was too short, and we could see also in the chat and the conversation how rich and so how much experience is in the room. I'm going to ask each facilitator of the group to share one or two highlights from the conversation. Don't try to be comprehensive. Something that struck you or you learned from the group exchange, and one or two, and then as we go on group to group, you can build on what the previous one said. Sole, would you like to start?
Yes, very briefly. What brought us together at the end was empathy and listening and suspending judgment.
Beautiful. Who else? There's Abby. What happened in the room?
So lots of different points that stood out, lots of pieces of wisdom from the different facilitators that had stood out to people in our group, including the role of the facilitator being a privileged role as well as the responsibility, although not 100% the responsibility of the facilitator, as well as piece of wisdom. But recognizing that the facilitator is one who is able to listen, to create the space for participants to hear each other, reflecting themselves, and not be in that cycle of kind of waiting to say the right thing, kind of allowing others to show up in that full-bodied way.
Beautiful. Thank you. I think, Camilla, you were also facilitating a room.
Yes, there were three aspects, I guess, like broad aspects. One of them was the space as a container, as a co-creation of values. So the facilitator is also like it's not just the responsibility of the facilitator, but the whole group to have a container. It goes also into the inner and outer landscapes, mirroring between these dynamics. And the last one that I think was powerful is that it's not just about to prevent conflict, because it will arise somehow and will probably arise. So it's more like to create these values all together, just to know how to go through it.
Beautiful. Yeah, one team where we were training facilitators, we said creating a space where it's okay to to disagree without being disagreeable. And Jessica, what came out in your group?
Yeah, in our group, there's some fascinating comments and areas that we explored. One had to do with, what is conscious facilitation? And we touched on the field, the social field, and how to tap the intelligence of the field. And one person spoke of setting an intention and then actually surrendering to what unfolds and flows in the room. And we also touched on consciousness appearing in fractals. What is ripples within ourselves can ripple out into the room and vice versa. So these different effects that happen at different scales, rippling between us. And we talked about AI, which I thought was really fascinating, how AI tools may impact on conscious facilitation more generally. And I sense there was some divergent perspectives on it in the room, but certainly the feeling of, AI tools are biased right now and, more cognicentric, more in the intellect. We need to be really careful for how we employ them, but they could be useful.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Nana.
I mean, it was nice to also hear some voices which was missing from our whole session. One voice was this conflict or anger or tension, how to actually facilitate to transform. So I think I give it this kind of notion of anger is maybe we shouldn't feel, but this was really nice to voice it. I think I saw some of the chat also about how to deal with anger and tension as a facilitated material, not just to one-sided. Another voice was especially maybe one voice was maybe we are maybe too much focused on the individual transformation in this facilitating, but what about structural systemic change, which Maria mentioned a little bit of the government way. So what is it actually to facilitate consciously in this structural and then the governmental or the systemic change? So these two voices was nice to share into the big group.
Wow. Noemi, I thank you, Nana. That's a very rich question, the topic of a whole session. Noemi, did you facilitate a group? No, huh? So it was just me. And actually, to build on that, how to handle conflict, that came up also in our group, and the importance of listening, but really regenerative listening, where everybody can feel valued and heard. And we talked about the fact that often now, in terms of management, there's a mix of hierarchical approaches and more horizontal, and that can lead to some discomfort. But that's where the importance of all team members really learning to value the perspectives of other colleagues or other peers that they're interacting with and understand their perspective, and the ability to hold multiple perspectives is quite important to create a space where everybody feels they have a place. And sometimes where there's a disagreement, it can help to identify those polarities and invite people to say, okay, there's A or B. How about we invent the third way together? How can we take the best of both positions and create something new and make it a creative polarity? Wow, I think yes, we're going to save this chat very preciously, because there's been so much expertise and wisdom shared also in written. I don't know if I'd like to ask each of our guest speakers, Sole, Jessica, Nana, and Noemi also, who's been wonderful in crafting this session, to finish with one word that you're walking away from after this delightful and, well, we feel a little bit unsatisfied because we feel there's so much more. We've just scratched the surface, but one word that you take home. Sole, what would be your word after this session?
Aliveness.
Aliveness, yes. Jessica.
Wholeheartedly.
Wow.
Working
Nana.
wholeheartedly.
Tension.
Sorry, say it again.
Tension.
Tension. Ah, yes. That can mean many things. I'm thinking attention, creative tension, difficult tension. We have to wholeheartedly embrace it in an alive way. Noemi, what's your word?
I want to finish with the movement.
Yes, that's a beautiful one. Let's end with this movement of wholeheartedly connecting to our heart and embracing the space. Thank you so much, all of you. You're welcome to join COFSA if you haven't yet done so, sign up to our newsletter, and welcome to the next space. And thank you for your trust and creating this wholehearted, very alive space, creative space. And thanks again to our great speakers.
Yes, thank you, Sole.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.